Hello, welcome to my channel WWE Pulse.
On March 19th, 2002, at WrestleMania X8, one of the greatest rivalries in wrestling history finally came to an end. But when these two icons collided inside the squared circle for the first time ever, it wasn't quite what anyone expected. It was me. It's March 19th, 2002, and you're watching The Fallout. In these series, we take an in-depth look back at some of the most historic matches in WWE history.
Excellent.
Join me as we relive the Attitude Era and beyond by discussing the events that shaped it, the fallout of those events, and the impact that they had on the WWE Universe. Let's talk about the night that Hulk Hogan returned to the WWE, where he defeated The Rock at WrestleMania X8 in Canada. This is an episode you won't want to miss. It's hard to overstate just how big of a deal the return of Hulk Hogan was to professional wrestling in the early 2000s, from 1983 to 1993. Hulk Hogan was the face of the WWE and helped propel the company to new heights of popularity during the so-called Golden Era. During that time, Hulk Hogan became a household name. And when he left the WWE for WCW in 1994, it seemed like nothing could ever be the same again. For money funds, it was almost like the passing of the torch from one generation of wrestling to the next. However, less than a decade later, after the height of the Monday Night Wars and the rise of the Attitude Era, the WWE was looking for a new top guy to replace the retiring Stone Cold Steve Austin. And who better to step up into that role than the man who was responsible for ushering in the Golden Era nearly 20 years prior. When Hogan returned to the WWE at the beginning of 2002, the crowd reaction was absolutely insane, but all of that excitement surrounding his return was somewhat overshadowed by another major event that happened earlier that year. On January 13th, 2002, at the Royal Rumble, The Rock made his return to the WWE after a 10-month hiatus. Prior to his departure, he had been feuding with and serving as the champion of the then undefeated Brock Lesnar. And upon his return, he immediately set his sights on regaining the title from the young powerhouse. While The Rock was initially successful in his quest, defeating Lesnar for the WWE Championship on February at No Way Out, he would go on to lose the title to Hollywood Hulk Hogan in a match at the aforementioned WrestleMania 18. But the biggest surprise of the bout was not the result, but rather the reaction of the crowd. Because the fans were firmly behind Hogan and cheering for him to beat the babyface Rock. It was clear that something had changed since the last time Hogan had competed for the WWE Championship in 1993. The fact that fans were cheering for the bad guy in this match is perhaps best exemplified by a video posted to YouTube by user KW Wrestling. In it, you can hear the crowd emphatically chanting "Hogan sucks" while The Rock's entrance music hits. And once the two superstars make their way to the ring, the fans begin to chant "You suck, Rock." And despite the clearly villainous actions of Hogan, the crowd cheers him on the entire match. Long at one point in the video, the fan in the red shirt directly behind the commentator's table even takes off his shirt in support of Hogan. That really drives home just how much the audience was behind the Hulk. But why were they supporting the bad guy in this match? Well, the answer might be simpler than you think. As mentioned earlier, this whole ordeal kicked off when The Rock returned at the Royal Rumble and challenged Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. However, due to an injury suffered by Lesnar, the title had been temporarily vacated, and a tournament was put together to crown an interim champion. The Rock ended up winning the tournament and therefore became the new WWE champion. But when Hogan returned to the company, he cut a promo essentially saying that The Rock never beat him for the title. So he was going to do it on his own turf at So, because the match was billed as a passing of the torch moment, with Hogan trying to prove that he was still relevant and better than the current crop of WWE superstars. Even though The Rock was the baby face in the match, the fans saw the writing on the wall and realized that Hogan was destined for victory. Therefore, they embraced the inevitable and cheered Hogan on instead of booing him. In fact, in kayfabe, The Rock even played into the whole notion that Hogan was superior. During the match, The Rock kept trying to utilize the ropes in order to get a cheap win. But each time he did so, he would stop himself. He then turned to the crowd and asked them if they wanted him to cheat and win. They responded by chanting yes, which prompted The Rock to ultimately decide that he would not stoop to Hogan's level and resort to dirty tactics. But it wasn't just the fans that were rooting for Hogan. During an interview with Chris Van Vliet, former WWE head of creative writing, Brian discussed how the entire production team was fully supportive of Hogan during his second run with the company. I know there's this sort of urban legend that Linda and Vince were not happy with Hulk being a heel and forced him to be a face. That's completely false. It was literally the exact opposite. We wanted him to be a heel, and he pushed back against it. And we were like, dude, you have to do this. And he was like, okay. Stewart's continued saying, so the idea of Hulk Hogan sort of playing the role of the anti-hero or the bad guy was something that he pushed for, but we felt like we needed to do because we had heard from various sources that that's what the fans wanted to see. And it was also kind of the truth, right? Hulk Hogan was always the bad guy. That's who he is. He's a braggadocious, boastful, self-absorbed showman. And we thought it would be interesting to play it exactly like that. So he's a heel and he's the most popular guy in the building, right? Ultimately. The decision to turn Hogan heel and embrace the WWE Championship reign he never got a chance to have in the 90s worked out pretty well. In his first run, he was too clean-cocked and squeaky clean to really garner any animosity from the crowd. Therefore, he was never able to fully embrace the villainous side of things. But by the time he returned in 2002, he was older, more comfortable in his own skin, and willing to let loose. According to Gourds, Hogan took full advantage of the freedom that was afforded to him. He was given an opportunity to do whatever he wanted, and he ran with it. There were no restrictions. You know, we wanted to make sure we didn't pull any punches with him. If he wanted to stand in the middle of the ring and cut a really blistering promo, he was allowed to do that. If he wanted to do a silly dance with Jimmy Hart, he was allowed to do that as well. There was no, oh, you can't do this because you're a WWE superstar's persona has to be a certain way. That was thrown out the window. He was like the king of the hill. And he could do whatever he wanted to do. And he was very appreciative of that. He never abused the trust, and he delivered huge ratings and huge buy rates and everything else. As stated earlier, the outcome of the match between The Rock and Hogan was never really in doubt. The fans already believed that Hogan was superior to The Rock and nothing was going to change their minds. So why even bother booking The Rock to win? It was simply a case of the WWE wanting to appease the legends of the past while embracing the future. Hogan had proved himself to still be a top-level draw, and the company wanted to capitalize on that momentum. At the same time, The Rock knew that his time in the spotlight was limited, and he would soon depart once again to focus on his budding movie career. By losing to Hogan, he was able to solidify his position as the top guy in the company before leaving, all while ensuring that the torch was passed to the right person, so to speak. After defeating The Rock, Hogan went on to defeat The Rock's cousin, the People's Champ, Rikishi, in his next match at But however, due to a combination of injuries and other commitments, Hogan was unable to compete on a consistent basis and only wrestled sporadically over the next few years. In fact, his last match to date took place in July of 2006 against the aforementioned Brock Lesnar at WWE's. As for The Rock, he would return to the WWE in late 2011 and go on to compete against the likes of John Cena, CM Punk, and Eric Rowan in 2013. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame and is now a 5-time WWE champion. And that's gonna do it for this episode of The Fallout. What do you think of the match between Hulk Hogan and The Rock at WrestleMania 80? Do you think the fans were right to cheer for the bad guy in this one? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'd appreciate it. Also, don't forget to check out my other social media accounts. Links are in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and I'll see you next time.
Okay guys, thank you for watching my videos.